Hi, I'm Danny and these are my Diecast Disasters. In this video I'm going to be customising this old Matchbox Jeep CJ6. These were produced from 1977 until 1981. You could get red, green and yellow versions. I thought I'd do something a bit different with this one, and I'm going to hot rod it. So I'll lower it a bit and I'll chop the windscreen there. And I'm also going to chop the bonnet out and stick a bigger motor in it. I had been thinking about lowering the previous Matchbox Jeep hot rod that I did, but the undercarriage was far too big on it. So let's take a look at our example here off of the turntable. Paint is fairly worn and chipped away there. It's missing its canopy. Otherwise, physically, it's in pretty good condition. There's not really much to it. Unpainted base there and the super fast style wheels. It's an odd looking Jeep to me. It looks kind of a bit too long. We'll start by taking the Jeep apart. There's one post holding it together and the rear lights act as tabs at the back. There's not much to it, just the base, the interior and the body. With it taken apart, I strip the paint off the body with some poly stripper. And then I give it a clean up with a wire brush on my rotary tool. This will get rid of the oxidation and any remaining scraps of paint on it. Once it was cleaned off, I measured up the windscreen pillars and then I'm going to cut those. Use a cutting disc on my Dremel for this. And I also cut the rear pillars. I use my needle files here to clean up the cuts. Next I finish it off with some sandpaper. I use some styrene to cut out a new top for the windscreen. And I'm going to use this black Star Bond super glue to glue it on there. And once I have it where I want it, I build up around the whole thing with the black Star Bond. And here it is once it's all been covered and the glue's dried. So that's nice and strong now. I want to get rid of the bonnet, so I'm going to start by cutting a decent sized hole with my drill here. I really should be doing this in a vise, but there you go. And now I've got a hole in there. I can get in with my jeweler's saw and start cutting it out. And here it is with the bonnet removed. It's actually a bit of a mission. I used a mixture of the jeweler's saw and a cutting disc on my rotary tool. I've also cleaned up the windscreen frame there. Here it is after a coat of white primer. And I've decided to paint it a nice green. This is a bit brighter than an army green. Next I just painted in the headlights and the indicators, and then I finished it all with a nice coat of gloss. So we'll move on to the base now. I'm going to be swapping out these wheels, so the first thing I'll do is remove them by cutting the axles. There's not a lot of room in here, so I'm trying not to cut the base too much. I can cut about halfway through the axle and then you can snap them off. A few people have commented about my thumb there. Don't worry, it's not sore. I just squished it in a ranch slider door. I've got a ranch slider door on my studio. It didn't even hurt really very much when I did it. It was just a mildly squashed thumb, although it doesn't look very good now. So the base here was unpainted, but I'll still give it a decent clean up with the wire brush. I want to lower it a little bit, so I'm going to glue in some new axle shafts above where the old ones were. I'm using some aluminium tubing here. I just put it in place and then add a couple of drops of my Starbond super glue here, and I'm going to use this accelerator to set it. So I just spray a little bit on, and there you go, she's completely set. You can check down in the description below for a link to get 10% off Starbond products with the code Danny10. So take advantage of that if you're after some good super glue. With my simple lowering job done, I can move on and paint it. I start out with an undercoat of black, and then I painted it in burnt iron colour. And I finished it with quite a heavy coat of silver weathering powder. And I fixed all this with a nice satin varnish. Here is the grubby old interior. Physically it's in perfect nick, but it needs a good wash. So here it is after a clean. Now I can paint it. I start out with some white primer, and then I paint the underneath in black, and then I paint down from the top again with the same green that I painted the body of the Jeep. I haven't used any masking or anything here. And then I just added a little bit of detailing, the seats there and the steering wheel, and I've painted the tow bar. Now I'm going to want a bigger motor for my Jeep, so I'm using the motor out of a good old Surf and Turf from Hot Wheels. These are a great source of a good size motor to throw in things. I paint over the chrome on it with a couple of coats of black primer, and then I paint it with a dark steel, and then down from the top with a chrome. I'm using Vallejo metal colour paints for this. And finally, here are the old wheels. Nobody's really a fan of those super fast ones, so we'll be swapping them out for these aftermarket ones here. So none of that was too tricky, and here are the parts of our Jeep, refurbished, repainted and ready to go back together. I wasn't quite sure how all this was going to come together in the end, so I'm quite excited to see how it turns out. But before we take a look at the finished custom, let's just take a moment to look back and be reminded of what we started with. Our really worn out looking old Jeep CJ6. It's missing its canopy there. It's got 80% of its paint chipped off it. It's sure seen a few miles of playtime, this old toy. So let's see if we can give it a new life as a hot rod. And here it is, our finished Jeep CJ6 custom chopped and lowered hot rod. It's been repainted in a nice green, it's been detailed, and it's got those great looking new wheels on it. So I'm pretty happy with how this has come out looking for a little experiment. I reckon it definitely looks way cooler than it did before. It was a really fun project on a car that I wasn't a huge fan of in the first place. I'll definitely be trying another one. There's a couple things I'll like to try differently next time. Like removing the front guards will look really cool, but of course this would have made the body completely fall apart and it would have been quite a bit of extra work with this one, but I'll probably do that on my next one. You can let me know what you think of our custom Jeep here in the comments down below. Do you like it? Hate it? I'd sure like to take it for a drive in real life. And now before I go, I'd just like to welcome all of my new subscribers, and as always say a massive thanks to everyone for the great comments and likes on my videos. Extra special thanks to my awesome Patreon supporters who help to support the channel through Patreon. They help to pay for things like paints and models, etc., which help me to keep making videos like this for you guys to watch. So if you'd like to join them and help out as well, you can check out my Patreon page. There's a link in the description below. There's also a link down there where you can get Starbond Superglue range for 10% off with the code Danny10. So take advantage of that. Thanks heaps for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to subscribe and hit the bell, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.